Hey, what's up, everybody? It is I, Retrovin, and I thought it would only be fitting since, I got a new profile picture. I'm kind of getting back into reviews. Why not review some older games I used to review? Starting off with the original Jak and Daxter, and hopefully we'll be going through the whole trilogy, possibly. But anyways, though, I guess we'll start with kind of like I did with Brandy and Mr. Whiskers, my history of it. So, this starts off with my introduction to Crash Bandicoot. I was in love with the game, I wanted to kiss the Bandicoot on his little Bandicoot lips. And because I loved the game so much, my grandpa, who was good friends with the manager at the game store that we used to go to, recommended a game. He recommended Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy because it was also made by Naughty Dog. Now, I was in love with this game, just because I love, the different lighting and the different things that I will mention in this review, so we'll get to that right now.
We won't find any more of that dark, gooey eco stuff, will we? Because I'd hate to fall in again and turn into you.
Get in there, before I turn you both into ferns!
Now, Jak is a mute elf boy who, again, doesn't talk. He does some grunts, but that's about it. And then you got Daxter, who's also an elf. Oh wait, no. Never mind, he turned into a weasel. So yeah, early in the game, Jak and Daxter basically go to Misty Island. Sadly for them, their little sage, Samos, told them not to. But, because they're idiots, they do it anyways. And they find these two weird people known as Gull and Maya. Now, Gull and Maya are interesting because they're the dark eco sages. And they seem to be, plotting something with the lurkers who... Keep in mind, the lurkers are not very good people in this game. They're the baddies. So Jak and Daxter go up, they're trying to figure out what's going on. And they end up finding a big pool of dark eco. Now, sadly for Jak and Daxter, one of the skeleton lurkers comes up, and Jak throws a big canister at him. Daxter was not so lucky, as he fell into the pool and he became a furry. With this lovely discovery, he then goes back to Samos's hut to inform him of this. Now, Samos was not so convinced. He thought that, man, this was the best transformation ever. Daxter looks way more handsome as a weasel than a human. So, as Samos would say,
because in my professional opinion, the change is an improvement.
Now, luckily for their asses, they have Kira, who has a zoomer. Now, to get the zoomer powered up, they have to collect power cells, so there's your plot right there, because they need to get to, Gull and Maya's area. And Gull and Maya's area is, far to the north. Far, far to the north. And the only way to get there is by foot through the Fire Canyon. But luckily, now that they have the Zoomerator, and they need to just collect power cells to get to different villages. Now, each village is based on a different sage. The first village is obviously Samos, the green sage, and so a lot of the village has a lot of greenery and life in it. The next area, which is the rock village, is the blue sage's area. Now, interesting thing about the blue sage's levels is, aside from the swamp, it kind of has more of a techie sort of feel to it with the Lost Precursor City and the Precursor Basin. And then you got the final hub world, which is Volcanic Crater. Volcanic Crater is the Red Sage's hut. There's not really much to do compared to the other two villages, because in the first two villages, right, Sandover, you got tons of people to talk to and tons of people to give you missions. In Rock Village, there's a couple. There's not quite as much. And then in Volcanic Crater, there's just these two miners, and all you do with the miners who are digging for gems down there is you give them a bunch of orbs pretty much for power cells. They don't really ask for much, maybe aside from some Spider Cave missions. And that's a kind of a critique I gotta make before we get fully into the gameplay is, and I get why they did it, it kind of stinks that it feels like after the first hub, a Sandover Village, the other hubs feel slightly half-assed. Now, the Rock Village hub is fine. There's not quite as much people to talk to, but it still gets the job done. I feel like with Volcanic Crater, they really ran out of time or something because it feels like there should be more people there to talk to. That and there's less levels than, the first two hubs. Of course, that's not a big deal because both levels are really good. But that's my little nitpick. And of course, you know, Golemaya's Citadel, I'm sure that was always meant to be just one big level, so I'm not really gonna complain about that one. So turns out Gaul is actually evil. I know, you all weren't expecting that twist. But, yeah, so Gaul is evil, and turns out that was the guy that could have changed Daxter back. So, you know, Daxter's gonna have to make a decision later on, whether he's gonna be able to use the power to help him or not. But before that, Samos is captured, and Kira lets Jak and Daxter know that as they get to Golemaya's Citadel. Now, once they get there, they see that all the sages are captured, which explains why the sages have gone missing for so long. So you gotta rescue all the sages, and once you do so, they're basically able to power the force field to open up the giant Precursor robot. Sadly for them, though, Gaul and Maya end up taking the Precursor robot, and then we're up for a final boss. Now, let me tell you, that final boss is pretty epic. I really like it. It's probably one of the coolest final bosses in games, because it just has really interesting phases. And, like, just the way you gotta, like, jump off there as they're shooting the bomb, and you gotta dodge their bullets. It's really good the way they did it. Now, once they finish off Gaul and Maya, that's pretty much the end of things. You know, they get up and celebrate. Jak and Kira get ready to kiss, and Daxter cock blocks them. You know, classic Daxter, of course. They then get told that they need 100 power cells to unlock a door. Now, here's the thing about this door, right? Imagine my shock when I end up getting all 100 power cells, or 101 if you get that extra one. You unlock the door, you're expecting something really cool, right? I know I was. And then turns out, oh, it's just a big giant light they're looking at. Like, I get it, I know it's related to Jak 2, but by the end of Jak 1, you're expecting something interesting, and that's all you get for getting everything, just everybody looking at this bright light going,
Wow! What is this thing?
Again, though, that's a nitpick out of love. I love this game, and that's probably the most I'm gonna have in terms of nitpicks, because the gameplay is really solid, and that's what you call a segue.
Hey, baby. What do you say you and I go cruising on this A-grad Zoomer?
Rule number 1, I don't hate animals.
You don't know what you're missing.
The gameplay's simple yet advanced at the same time. While you have your basic spin, kind of like Crash, and you got your punch, and you got your slam, you got a ton of other moves too, like an uppercut, and just various different things. It's interesting, like how acrobatic they tried to make Jak in terms of his, you know, moves, because depending on like if you jump or if you press square and X, you get like different moves from it. The eco power-ups really add to it too. Like, for example, green eco, which is, you know, Samos's eco, gives you health. It's the eco of life. Blue eco, which powers machines, as you would assume, makes Jak go super fast, and also makes him open doors and various other things with electric symbols on it. Then there's yellow eco. Now, yellow eco is basically pew pew gun eco. It basically lets you shoot giant yellow fireballs at enemies, and it's really satisfying to use. And then you got red eco. Red eco is pretty good as well, because red eco makes your attack stronger. Now, instead of like, for example, in Misty Island, instead of punching the skull lurkers and having to hit them twice, you only gotta hit them once. And it just takes out more enemies, and it has like a better range. So it's kind of like a shotgun, but for your fists in a way. And Dark Eco. Oh, Dark Eco gives you pretty crazy powers. It kills you. The levels are also very solid. I love the different environments. Probably my favorite village and levels in that village is obviously Sandover Village. It seems like the first is the best, in my opinion. Not that the later levels are any bad. They're pretty good themselves, but it's obvious that they put the most work into the early levels. I really love Sentinel Beach. It's such a nostalgic area, and I love the music in that one, which we'll be getting to as well. I love Forbidden Jungle, and just all the trees and everything, and the creepy creatures out there, and that fucking fisherman. Hate him. We also got Misty Island. That's the area where Daxter got turned into a furry, of course. And that's a pretty cool area too, because you have a lot of stuff to do there. And That's what I like. I like the freedom to explore around these levels. And I know that's a thing they've done before, but with barely any loading screens, or at least hidden loading screens, it really feels seamless and it really feels like you're going on an adventure. And that's the thing I always loved about this game as a kid. I loved like just letting my imagination go wild and exploring these cool little environments. I also really like riding the Zoomerator and Precursor Basin. There's some parts that are a little janky there, but it's a very good area and I enjoy the ring challenges and various other things you can do there. Obviously, there's not as much you can do as you would in other levels, but it's still pretty good for what it is. Boggy Swamp, it's pretty good. It's a little tough at points, but, you know, it's definitely not the worst. It's my least favorite of the Rock Village levels. And then there's the Lost Precursor City. There's a lot of interesting things to it, like just the environment itself. The idea of an underwater ancient lost city is so cool. And I know it's been done to death 50 million times, I'm sure, but I love it. It is so cool. And different things you do are really interesting too, like the moving pads, the various different objectives you gotta do to get power cells are very interesting too. And lest we forget the Rising Dark Eco Pool that Size Matters took some inspiration from. Sorry, High Impact, I'm calling you out. Now, while it doesn't have that many levels, I will say Volcanic Craters still has pretty good, like, environments. Snowy Mountain is very nostalgic. Maybe not in the nicest of terms, because Snowy Mountain is fucking brutal. Not now, but as a kid, it was definitely very brutal to deal with. But I will say, for the lack of levels compared, like, 3 versus 2, which isn't too bad, it does feel like they improved on the size of them rather than the amount of levels. Snowy Mountain is really huge compared to some of the other levels. So I suppose they did that to make up for the loss of a level. And Spider Cave can go eat my ass. In all seriousness though, I don't mind Spider Cave. It can be a pain in the ass like Snowy Mountain, and it's not as good as Snowy Mountain, but I do love the environment of Spider Cave, and some of the objectives are pretty good on it, like climbing the Precursor robot. That's really cool. Yeah, it wasn't cool when I fell and had to go back up, but, you know, I digress. Still fun nonetheless, and the lights out sort of area, kind of like Crash, where you gotta hit the crystals to keep the lights on, were also interesting. And then, of course, we have to mention the in-between areas. Now, what are the in-between areas, you might ask? Well, remember when I mentioned Fire Canyon earlier in this review? So yeah, Fire Canyon is basically the first area you go to with your Zoomerator after you get enough power cells, and you get to ride it over the lava. It's because it's got a heat shield. Now, the interesting thing about this one is it's not just a leisurely ride. You have to hit these air balloons to basically, you know, keep your air and not explode. And it's pretty good. It's nothing special. You basically just ride through it. There's some scout flies and a power cell at the end of it, but it's mainly meant to be a transitional area rather than a full level. There's also the more green and grassy Mountain Pass. Mountain Pass looks very pretty. And the concept of having to chase after the lurkers to detonate the bomb, while a lot of people probably didn't like that, and I sure didn't as a kid, I think it's really cool because it's almost like a race. You're trying to chase them to the end, and a very unique way of doing it. Also, props to them for giving you a reason to go back after opening the yellow eco vents in Snowy Mountain. Well, you know, with that hidden power cell over there. There's also the level with my favorite music track, Lava Tube. I love the Lava Tube. I'm kidding, I hate the Lava Tube. I die a lot in that one. I'm pretty sure it's impossible to not die once in that. Unless you're like got super good reflexes or something.
Everything that doesn't sink into the mud, that is.
Judging by the smell, I'd wager your bathtub sank in the mud long ago.
What's a bathtub? Anyway, I got bigger problems.
Now talking about the music, there are a lot of good music tracks, and one of the unique things about the Jak and Daxter soundtrack is the fact that the music is different depending on what part of the level you're in. So say, for example, I'll give you Sentinel Beach, right? The main beach has a main track. When you're out by the pyramids, basically, and you're exploring, like, the ancient ruins there, the music kind of gets a little different, and there's, like, a different hue to it. Or I'll give you another example in Sandover Village. Sambos's hut has like a little bit of extra instrumentation, or the farmers got more like kind of instrumentation to it, and it just really makes it feel like there's a sense of uniqueness depending on what part of the level you're in, because every level has a form of that in some way, shape, or form. And it just really adds to the ambience of the environments as well.
And to think, you two traveled all this way blind. Fools! Enjoy your Monroe seats to the recreation of the world!
Oh, the boss fights. Let me tell you about the boss fights. They're very basic, but, you know. I don't mind the Crash boss fights, and that's basically what the Jack bosses are. There's a pattern to each of them. First boss you have is the plant boss. You wait for him to send out his little plant minions, I guess. You kill them, he starts swiping at you, and then you jump off on the pedals and you kill the guy. And that's pretty much it. It was really cool after defeating him that you got to just keep jumping on his little plant head to get Precursor orbs. It sounds kind of fucked up, but that was pretty satisfying, just being able to get the orbs from his head. And then there's Claw. Everybody loves Claw. I don't mind the boss. I do think it's kind of bullshitty at points when he's shooting out his boulders, because it feels like the boulders don't really have a set pattern. Like, I could be jumping away from one, and then I'll randomly be shooting it, like, at another spot. And then right after he shoots it where I'm going. It's confusing, because you think he's just shooting it, like, where you're jumping, right? But there's no pattern to it. Other than that, though, the boss is pretty good. I enjoy shooting the yellow eco balls at him and watching the boulder crush him. It's pretty fun. And that's pretty much it when it comes to bosses, since I already mentioned Golem Maya and how it is one of the epicest bosses. Now, for a 2001 game, do I think this game is aged pretty well? I actually do. It's definitely got some jank in it, but for a 2001 game, it's understandable. Plus, there's a lot of things that it did that really pushed the boundaries. Like the lighting, as I mentioned before, where it can go from sunrise to sunset to noon. It's really pretty, too, when you see the different times of day, and very unique for 2001, because you never saw day-night cycles like that. And the aforementioned disguised loading screens. Those are always cool, too. What would I rate the game if I was able to give it a rating? That's a good question. I would say probably an 8 out of 10. I think it's a good game, but there are some flaws in it that do push it down just ever so slightly. But overall, I think it's a very good masterpiece, and I definitely recommend it to any platformer fans, especially Collectathon platformer fans, because in my personal opinion, I think it's the best Collectathon. It has the best parts of a lot of them, I think. And again, that's my nostalgia talking. And maybe, perhaps, I'm saying that it's aging pretty well because I was also a 2001 child. And, you know, I don't want to think that I'm old. Anyways, though, that was my review of Jak and Spaxter, the Precursor Legacy. I hope you guys enjoyed my review, and have yourselves a good one. I'll probably be doing Jak 2 and maybe Jak 3 afterwards. Who knows? But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next review, and I'm out. Peace.